going. The most popular question that we ever receive about anything is there going to be a recording? And the answer is always yes, there will be a recording of this webinar. We are recording from here to the end. We'll take a moment to process the recording and clean it up and everything, but we'll send that out to you later this evening so you can watch it back. You can share it with a colleague and go review something that maybe you missed. But we're also going to share a few links with you later as well, including a link to the slide deck. We typically get these transcribed if you want to read it back, as well as some other featured resources that we may mention throughout the webinar today. On top of that, we want your questions. So I would love for you throughout the day today or throughout the next hour to use that chat to give your commentary and your thoughts and ideas. And if there's something that you think is really interesting, you can say that. Whoa, that's really interesting. But if you have a question that you'd like for us to answer at the very end of the webinar, please use the Q&A feature in your Zoom toolbar. So there's one that says chat. There's also one that says Q&A. So if you click that, you can put your questions in there throughout the session today, and we will do our best to answer those questions at the very end. Again, my name is Nathan Hill. I run marketing here at Next After. And primarily my focus is to try to take what we're learning through data and through research and through testing and bring these ideas to you to make what we're learning about decoding generosity, what works to get more people to say yes to giving. I'm trying to bring these ideas to you to equip you as best as we can to unleash generosity as well. And again, we're joined by Nick Miller from Fundraise Up. He's going to share a little bit towards the end of the webinar today about Fundraise Up and how they might help you, especially this season, to grow your giving. Nick, welcome. Are you there?
I sure am. Thanks, Nathan, so much for having me on today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, without further ado, let's dive in to the year-end fundraising playbook. Specifically, we're going to look at some different strategies that you can use primarily through email to grow giving this season based on what we've learned through research and testing and through practical application and actually growing online fundraising programs. So these are not just best practices, but there's data and insights that have gone into crafting these different strategies for you. Now, I actually gave a version of this presentation just a few weeks ago at the NIO Summit, the NEO Summit, Nonprofit Innovation and Optimization Summit. Some of you may have been there. If you were and you saw this, we're actually going to go a little bit deeper today with some more examples and more insights. If you weren't there, this will be all new. But the NEO Summit is a conference. First and foremost, it's a conference. At least it's kind of like a conference where you will hear from a lot of incredible people with incredible new ideas. We're injecting into the fundraising space, largely from for-profit, cutting-edge ideas to try to help us as fundraisers and nonprofit communicators sort of push the envelope. So you hear from lots of really insightful people. You meet some incredible folks as well, and you have a ton of fun while you're doing it. And sometimes there's Oompa Loompas there as well. And so as I was preparing this session for the NEO Summit, if you know me at all, I'm kind of a Star Wars nerd. I mean, and kind of is not the right word. I'm definitely a Star Wars nerd. And I wanted to think about, is there a fresh take we can have as we think about year-end fundraising? And so naturally, as a Star Wars nerd, my mind goes straight to like, is there some kind of cool Star Wars analogy? And so I'm on my iPad and I'm like drawing stuff out and I'm thinking, well, if we think about it in terms of the galactic star map, you might have donors that are all over the place, and some are like way out here in the outer rim, and some are more towards the core world, and some are in the expansion region, and they're all over the place. And we need to find a way to get donors from all these different areas to move towards the central point of generosity. And the more I got into this, the more like nerdy at God, we're talking about how can we inject coaxium into the fuel lines of the Millennium Falcon to escape the clutches of the monster so we could supercharge our fundraising. And so quickly I had to scrap most of this because there's maybe a handful of people in, oh yes, Diana says this is the way. I love it. Diana, you are part of the handful of people that would maybe understand and enjoy that type of a playbook using Star Wars as the backbone for it. But the reality is there's a lesson to be learned here is that while there are some people who would really think that's cool and interesting and exciting, there are a whole lot of other people that wouldn't get it at all and would really miss the point. And I think that there's a year-end fundraising lesson for us to learn here, which is that our donors are, in fact, at lots of different points in the galaxy, if you will. They have lots of differing motivations. They have different levels of commitment, different amounts that they have given to you, different levels of understanding of your organization, and ultimately, they may have different passions, all related to your cause, but maybe some donors are more passionate about another type of program that doesn't quite get you as the fundraiser quite as excited. So you have things in your purview that get you excited, you might naturally want to write about and tell people about, but maybe they don't quite align with what your donor is wanting. And maybe they'll help some people catch on and catch this wave of generosity and giving, but they might miss the mark with others. And so an analogy I'm borrowing from my friend John Powell, who put some of our initial year-end fundraising training together, is that building one of these year-end campaigns is like cutting a brilliant diamond. If you're trying to get the most beautiful, spectacular, brilliant diamond, you don't just go buy the biggest one. You need to get one that's also really, really well cut. And to make a diamond sparkle most brilliantly, you need lots of different angles and facets in order to direct the light into the right spaces in order for it to really illuminate and shine most brilliantly. The same thing really needs to happen inside of our year-end campaigns. So as we look at the communication that we send out over the course of the year-end season, which we define as November 15th through the end of the year, there are lots of different angles and facets that we can and need to take in order to fully explain and show our donors why they might give. Because just one email might not cut it in terms of inspiring your donor. We need to show them sort of the breadth and the scope of the impact that they can make with a gift. And so that's really our goal in the year-end season, is to showcase all the ways that they can make a meaningful impact on the cause that they care about through your organization. And before we get into all the details here, I want to stop for a moment and think about, why is year-end fundraising actually important? There are many of you today who probably know exactly how important year-end fundraising is to you. You probably have it down to the number. We bring in X percentage of our revenue during the year-end season. If we don't, then we're not going to be as impactful next year. But I've learned over the past few years teaching more about year-end fundraising is that there's quite a lot of us who maybe are just starting out and just trying to figure out, how do I make the most of year-end? And maybe have never seen quite the same level of results as others. So let's start here. And at Next After, we do a lot of data, or a lot of testing, a lot of research. We're really three things. We're a research lab, a digital-first agency, and a training institute. And our ultimate goal, we're trying to help nonprofits grow their digital fundraising and ultimately unleash greater generosity. So we're conducting a lot of research, both through experimentation about what works to grow giving, as well as more market research to see what are organizations actually doing. We can tell what works through testing, but we want to see, are organizations implementing effective strategies? Or are there new things that maybe some organizations are doing that we should be testing to see how do they impact giving? And so one way that we do this is we go out and we might make a bunch of donations to a bunch of different organizations and track communication. So a recent research study that we conducted with our friends at Virtuous actually was this study called the State of Year-End Multichannel Fundraising. And part of that study was to find out, how much giving actually comes in during the season. And as we look at the organizations that we work with on a consistent basis, what we saw was that in 2020, 35% of online revenue for the year came in during this 45-day year-end window, November 15th through the end of the year, which is quite significant. But maybe you don't trust our data. You say, well, you guys work with online fundraising focused organizations, so maybe that's skewed. Maybe I can't do that. Well, here's what our friends at YearEnd One have found, is that nearly 1/3 of annual giving occurs in December, which is a little bit different number, a little bit different time frame, but kind of says the same thing. Our friends at Bloomerang and Pursuant conducted a study that found that 50% of nonprofits receive a majority of their annual donations during Q4, which again is something different, but it's really saying the same thing, which is that ultimately there's so much at stake during this year-end season. The opportunity for bringing in significant revenue is there if we come to the table to participate and connect with our donors. But what we found through this multi-channel research is that there's a lot of organizations that just simply aren't showing up. In fact, during the year-end season in 2020, 37% of organizations, of nonprofits, sent nothing to their postal donors. And we're not just looking at direct mail. We're actually looking at both direct mail and email and seeing that 37% of organizations sent not so much as an email or a postcard or anything to their postal donor. The online donor metrics look a little bit better. That's the blue side of your screen right now. But this is still 1 in 10 organizations basically opting out of sending so much as an email to an online donor during the most critical giving season of the year, which is shocking. I see Sarah jumps in the chat and says, wow, and that's how I feel every time I've seen this. Like, this is quite shocking. And the good news is that there's lots of opportunity, which means we can start connecting with our donors and probably see an increase in giving. But think of it from the donor's perspective. How sad is it that I might give to you and then not hear from you at all, especially during such a critical season? So we have to show up and participate and connect with our donors during year end. Now, I think there's a common misconception sometimes as we think about the year end season. It's easy for us to get really excited about something like Giving Tuesday because it is newer. It's not brand new anymore, but it's newer compared to the December 31st tax deadline, which has been around for quite some time. So Giving Tuesday is new and it's exciting and it's rapidly growing and it's this big movement. And if you exist on planet Earth and you're remotely connected to the internet, you're going to see something about Giving Tuesday on Giving Tuesday. So it's easy for us to be tempted to put all of our focus or our priority over here on Giving Tuesday campaigns. But here's what the revenue says. In 2020, again, this is focused on the organizations we've worked with here at Next After, but this is what we see in terms of the trends of online revenue coming in. During the year-end season, 4.6% of online year-end revenue came in on Giving Tuesday, which is a significant amount of revenue. I want to give credit where credit is due, that there's a significant amount of revenue coming in on Giving Tuesday. In fact, some data might suggest that it can be really effective for acquiring new donors. However, if we're thinking about revenue impact, the last day of the year, December 31st, saw 253% more revenue coming in compared to Giving Tuesday. And then if you zoom out to the final the whole last week of the year, 734% more revenue came in during the last week of the year compared to Giving Tuesday. Now, I'm not saying that you should count Giving Tuesday out. You should be a part of it and certainly participate, but maybe we need to get this in the right priority where we first focus the majority of our efforts on the last week of the year because there's so much more at stake. Now, analyzing what nonprofits are doing. Sent some form of mail during the week of Giving Tuesday, not just the day, but the whole week of Giving Tuesday. 57% sent some form of email during the week of Giving Tuesday. And if we compare this to the last week of the year, the numbers are, they're slightly different, but they're kind of the same. I'll show you those again. You've got 20% and 57%. For the last week of the year, you've got 18% and 58%. They're essentially the same. There is very minimal difference in the ways that these nonprofits prioritized Giving Tuesday versus the last week of the year. If they're going to choose one, it's kind of a toss-up. Well, maybe we'll do Giving Tuesday, maybe we'll do the last week of the year. But again, the revenue numbers say something pretty significant, which is our priority should be on the last week of the year. So here's your bare minimum year-end fundraising playbook. Number one, please send something to your donors. You can send anything. You can take your phone out and you can take like a selfie and you can send that and just say happy holidays, and that's better than nothing. Make a personal human connection with your donors during the season. Because if you don't, there are so many other organizations that are actually buying lists and getting the information of your donors and sending them mail and sending them emails to try to solicit their donation. So if you don't show up during the most critical giving season of the year, they might give to someone else and not give to you. So send something, send anything. Number two, send during the last week of the year. That's where the most revenue is at stake. And then third, you can send during Giving Tuesday as well. And you can prioritize them in this order, sending something, focusing on the last week of the year, and then building out your Giving Tuesday strategy. There's a whole lot more you can do during year end, but if you're going to do just these three things, this is a great place to start in this priority. Now, if you can get a little bit more advanced, how do you start to tell your whole story over the course of the whole season without just asking for money over and over and over and over and over and over and over again and burning out your entire email file so that they never give to you again? That's really the key. How do we do this effectively and send email that people want to receive? One key to doing this is what we call priming and framing email. We're going to look at 3 different categories of emails that you can send during this season. We'll look at a few examples of each one. And we're going to start here, priming and framing. The idea of priming and framing is exactly what you might think, and the picture on your screen elicits. When you're painting, and I'm sure you've experienced this. We've been doing a lot of household projects and lots of painting and things lately. And I really don't like priming because you don't see the impact of it right away. Sure, you can see the primer going on, but that's not ultimately the color that I want on the wall. And so it's kind of tedious and you don't see the impact of it immediately. But if you skip priming, then when you finally go to put the color on the wall, it's not going to be as effective. You might need like 3, maybe 4 coats for it to really show up and look nice if you skip the priming. But if you put the primer on, then maybe you'll need 1 or 2 coats. It actually makes what comes next more effective. And the same thing is happening in our year-end fundraising. If we prime our donors using some of these examples we're going to look at, it's going to make our donation appeals all the more effective. And another word you might use for priming and framing is really cultivation. How do we lean into the relationship with the donor? Doing more than just asking for money. How do we prime them? If you want a technical definition, you might say this: the process whereby a person is exposed to a stimulus that influences how they think or feel about something later on. Again, we're trying to influence them to give, but not by sending more and more donation appeals. We're priming them for an appeal that's going to come later. One example of this is a survey email. And when I talk about a survey email, you probably have a lot of things that run through your head. What we're not talking about is sending a survey to get a bunch of demographic info back about our donors, so we can categorize them into buckets and levels of giving and all that type of stuff. What we're actually trying to do in this sort of survey is to build alignment. Not to inform a future marketing campaign necessarily, but to build alignment in the moment with the donor so that they actually might start to trust you and trust that their investment and donation in you can lead to a result that they care about. And don't think about asking for money in the email. Don't put a PS in this email that says, hey, this survey is great, but we really want you to give. That's not the goal of this email. We're priming, we're framing, we're leaning into the relationship. Here's what it might look like. This is a real email sent last year from our friends at Canadian Taxpayers. It says, dear supporter, and I have to imagine that was replaced with the first name. So dear first name, dear Nick, if you will. You need to make politicians listen in 2021 because taxpayers are getting squeezed hard. Here's the question. What do you want to say? Here's a link to get started. You can see that on your screen. You click the link and you go to a landing page. They're giving their donors a voice. This is a form of cultivation. How can I give my donors a voice and empower them? You can scroll down to the email. There's more you can read about. And then ultimately, there's another PS to click the link and you go to a landing page. And on this landing page, you can begin the survey. And it's not a quick survey. It's actually pretty lengthy. There's 24 questions in this survey. And in each one, they're giving some different statements about different things this organization believes and stands for. And you basically can rank them as in terms of, do I think this is a high priority for me or is it a low priority? And what's implicit throughout this survey is that as you're ranking these things and you're giving your feedback, they're giving you, the donor, a voice, but it's implied that as I'm ranking these things and telling you my opinion, that you can actually make a difference on these different values and policies and ideas that I care about. And you're starting to build trust that if I give to you, you can actually make an impact, and you're planning to make an impact on these things that I, the donor, care about. So we're building trust through this survey, not gathering demographic info, but we're building alignment. And then following the survey, after you click submit and complete your survey, instead of going to a page that just says, hey, share this on Facebook or Twitter or TikTok or whatever, you come to an instant donation page. And this is a different form of confirmation page that pivots straight to a donation appeal. Here's how you can give to make an impact on these things that you care about before the year-end deadline. And if you scroll down on the page, you see a donation form. You can actually give right here on the page. So this is a way, even in this small little micro campaign, you prime through the survey, and you lead them towards a donation appeal. And this donation appeal doesn't exist and isn't effective without the priming that came before. Now you've given them a voice, they're also going to be more likely to give later on through a larger year-end focused email fundraising appeal. This is one example. Let's give another example here. And we'll actually do 2 more priming examples. There's lots of things you can do to prime your donors. If you're in the States, I know that there's a lot of Canadians on the call today and on the webinar today. If you're in the US, Thanksgiving has not happened yet. So this is something you can take advantage of. The goal of this Thanksgiving email is to thank donors and subscribers for their ongoing support around this day of giving thanks. If you are not in the States or you're in Canada and Thanksgiving has already passed for you, you can still send this type of an email. Maybe it's not framed in terms of the Thanksgiving holiday, but you can still send a personal human email that thanks donors for the ways that they've been able to make an impact this year. And do not ask for money in this email. Again, these priming emails are not, the goal is not to get a donation right here, right now. It's to pave the way and prepare the way for what's going to come next. Here's an example from AmeriCares of what this may look like. This is a human email sent to a person from a person. It's got some copy. There's a link to go watch a video. You can see towards the top of the email, there is like an embedded video. Typically, we try to send more human looking emails like just this sort of block we're looking at enlarged on your screen. But there's some human copy that leads towards a link, not to a donation page, but to go watch a video about the impact you, the donor, have been able to make through your giving this year. This is something that you can try out. Here's another example from Food for the Hungry that I got in my inbox last year. We're going to scroll through it. It says your impact report. It was sent around Thanksgiving, right after Thanksgiving, actually. I hope that you and your family still enjoyed a happy Thanksgiving, despite it looking different this year in the midst of COVID-19. Your gracious support of our organization helps raise people living in poverty. So they're giving me the credit here for making this type of impact. Your partnership has helped save children from malnutrition. Again, giving me the impact. They've told a story to showcase the impact that my giving can actually make. And then as you get to the bottom, there's actually a call to action button that does not send you to a donation page, but sends you to go learn more about the impact and see more stories of impact. You can see it says, take a moment to read their stories now. The goal of this donation, or this not donation appeal, the goal of this email is not to make a donation appeal. It's to help your donors and subscribers see the impact that they have made, both through giving this year, as well as maybe through their advocacy for you this year. That's the goal. And here's how impactful it can be. This is not an email, so this is maybe a multi-channel strategy that you can try. But this organization on Thanksgiving split their donor file in half and sent half of them a postcard that said, a Thanksgiving message for you. On the inside was a thank you note from the president of the organization, talking about Thanksgiving, giving thanks for the donor and their ongoing support, and showcasing some of the impact. There was actually a link in there to go to a landing page where you could watch a video from the president of this organization explaining even more about his gratitude for the donor. And what this led to was not some immediate impact on donations right there through like a direct appeal, but it actually led to a 204% increase in the likelihood of these donors giving during the year-end season. They primed and they cultivated, and it made the appeals they sent later on that much more effective. Let's look at one additional example, which is what we call the free offer email. It uses that instant donation page we talked about just a moment ago. But the goal is to give your donors something of value for free. It could be an ebook, it could be a video series, it could be a course, some sort of content they have to fill out a form in order to access that's going to be valuable for them. This is not like a free gift when you give a donation or make a donation. This is just free. Okay, let's look at this model. You send an email that talks about this free offer, this free piece of valuable content. They come to a landing page like this one where you can read more about the offer. You can fill out a form in order, in this case, to get the Portable Handbook of Texas. This was sent on Giving Tuesday. You fill out the form, they send the ebook to your email address. And then you come again to one of these instant donation pages where they say thanks, and they move directly into a donation appeal with a donation form on the page. And this can be quite effective towards leading towards donations without sending an additional donation appeal. One thing I want to address here, though, is if we're sending them an email, why do we need to ask for their email address again? Isn't this some additional level of friction? And so we actually put this to the test because we have this question. Do we need to ask for their email address again? I don't know. We need to put it to the test and see. And so here's what happened. In version B of this experience, you received an email. And when you clicked on the link to say, yes, I'm interested in this book, it sends you straight to the instant donation page. But it now says, thank you, your free copy of the book is already on its way to your email address. So what they did was they cut out this little step in the middle. So the donor or potential donor no longer has to read about the offer and fill out a form. They just go straight to the instant donation page. Theoretically, this could reduce friction and lead to more giving, but in fact, it actually led to a decrease of 41% in donations and a 32% drop in average gift size. And there's probably a couple things happening here, which is that throughout this process, as someone says yes to a smaller ask, yes to opening the email, yes to clicking through to the page, yes to reading the copy on the page, yes to receiving the offer and then getting to the instant donation page, every time they say yes, they're actually more likely to say yes to a larger ask on the next step. So they're building momentum throughout the process. And that was eliminated in version B. But on top of that, as someone is getting to this landing page, they're reading about the offer and they're seeing, wow, this is actually really valuable for me. I read about some of it in the email. Now it's being reinforced how valuable this resource is as I read about it on the landing page. I have to do a little bit of work to fill out the form and get this free resource. And after I do that, I actually have a greater feeling of gratitude because I understand the value of this free thing that you just gave to me. And now I might actually turn that feeling of gratitude around into an act of generosity and give to you on that instant donation page. So we do have to ask for the email. Don't cut out that middle step. But here's really the overarching principle here of all these priming emails and priming tactics, which is that donors are relational people. They're relational human beings. We need to invest in the relationship before we ask them for money. Moving forward, after you've primed, after you've cultivated, after you've leaned into the relationship with your donor, how do you actually make an effective appeal? The goal is really to emulate this sort of appeal or note that you might find in your mailbox every now and again, which is an actual handwritten letter, handwritten note. Whenever you see something like this in your inbox, you're almost 100% likely to open it because it feels personal. It feels meaningful. It feels impactful. We want to emulate this same sort of feeling as much as we possibly can in the inbox by sending from a human being and sending appeals that look like they're from a human being. Because in reality, there is a human being on the other end. I see Rebecca says, I live in Baltimore. That's not a Baltimore zip. Must be a stock photo, I guess, Rebecca. Thanks for the commentary there. I love it. Let's jump in and let's look at an example of one of these personal appeals. This one is what we call the YearEnd Overview. The goal of this email is to explain the stakes heading into the new year and to ask for a donation right away. So with this priming emails over here, we're not asking for a donation in the email. Now we're getting to this point where we can actually make a direct donation appeal. And we're trying to explain what's at stake in the new year. What has been impacted this year that's maybe positive, or maybe what are some of the things that have slipped this year related to the cause that we need to make an intentional effort to improve in 2022. So we need to explain the stakes, explain some of the goals, and cast the vision for where things are going while asking for a donation right away. Here's an example from a few years ago from Oxfam that I think is interesting and follows a fairly simple outline for you to emulate and to follow. Right at the top, they start to outline the problem, and it's a really impactful problem. I'll read this sentence out loud, and I think you can feel the weight of it. UN agencies have just announced that the number of hungry people in the world has increased for the first time this century. We're witnessing it firsthand. Right now, 7 million people are on the brink of famine in Yemen. In South Sudan, millions more are preparing for what's being called the hungriest start to a year on record. That outline of the problem is impactful. And it's also really big. It's not a problem that I can solve with a $50 or $100 donation, but they're outlining the problem. If there's not a problem, then there's actually no reason to give. Even if your problem isn't this big, maybe you're very locally focused, but there's still an issue at hand that you're trying to solve, whether it's for a person or it's a policy or it's something else. There's a problem at hand that you're trying to solve and improve. So we need to cast that vision for what the problem is that needs to be solved. This is the ultimate reason that really your organization exists. And then they move into the solution. In emergency zones around the world, there's a dire need for supplies, safe sanitation, and for clean water. There might be more they could do to actually cast a larger vision for what the solution is, but they start to give you some ideas as to how an impact can be made. Now, me as an individual, I can't necessarily provide clean water for everyone. I can't necessarily provide safe sanitation for everyone. So they need to start to move towards what's the impact that the donor can actually make. And that's what they do next. We need your support to help people survive these crises and to ensure we can keep successful poverty fighting efforts in more than 90 countries going strong. The only way we can do this is with your help. Again, there may be additional ways to expand this and help people understand specifically, where does my gift go? What does it do? How does it make an impact? Who does it help? How quickly can it be used? But they're following this sort of framework, moving from this problem to the solution to the impact that you, the donor, can make. And then out of this, they move towards an incentive to give. This is not another reason why someone should give, but it's a reason why they might give now instead of later. The primary incentive they use here is that you can make a tax-deductible gift. Now, I think you all would probably say that if someone gives to you, it's tax-deductible. For most of us, that's probably the case. So this might not be the most effective incentive. There may be other things you can use here. Can someone have their gift matched, their impact multiplied? Maybe you can use a countdown clock to invoke a certain sense of urgency that the deadline is coming. Maybe there's a free gift you can give to someone. Maybe you have a threshold-based premium where if you give at a certain level this week or today, then we'll send you this free gift or free premium. So you might consider adding an incentive. Again, not a reason to give, or not an additional reason to give, but a reason to give now instead of later. And then finally, you need to give people a clear call to action. Help reach our $3.5 million goal before the deadline. They're not saying help solve world hunger, because that's really big, and I can't do that by clicking this link and giving you a gift. They're asking you to take the next step, which is to donate. As we look at some experimentation around this, this is simply a design experiment where version A and version B say the same exact things. But version A uses a lot more design. You can see that clearly on your page. The top corner, you've got a big logo, you've got a donate button, you've got this big hero image that has some branding language, and then you have a designed progress bar. Version B, all those things are gone. It looks more like an email that you might send from your inbox. There's still some design elements in there, some formatting of the text that maybe is a little bit above and beyond what you might do in Gmail or Outlook, but it looks more like an email that a human being would believably send. And this led to a 29% increase in donations. So it's not just about the language we use in trying to make that personal and warm and communal and inviting, but it's also about the wrapper for the email, making sure that that appears like a personal communication, because again, people give to people. I want to show you what I'm going to call a more optimized example. And we shared this at the NEO Summit. Hopefully it's interesting and kind of fun here. But this example would come from, say, the Rebel Alliance. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is not just to have fun talking about Star Wars, but to see that this type of problem, solution, impact framework can really be applied to any organization. You don't have to be Oxfam. You don't have to have this sort of massive global reach. You don't have to have a very specific category of a cause or an impact. This can be applied even to the fictional Rebel Alliance. So it says this to illustrate the problem. It's a dark time. The Death Star has been destroyed. Imperial troops have driven rebel forces from their hidden base. Innocent civilians have been enslaved, and there's killing millions of life forms across the galaxy. This is a problem. This is clearly a problem that we can outline and we can provide clarity to. We can show our donors what the problem is and sort of help illustrate the great need. And then they move into the solution. There's still reason for hope. We're preparing an all-out assault on the second Death Star with aims to end this galactic civil war. This is a big solution. No individual can actually go blow up the Death Star, unless maybe you're Luke Skywalker. But this is the broad solution. And then they have to bring it around to the tangible impact a donor can make. That's where we need your help. First name, your donation will help provide blasters and food and fuel and critical equipment and help us blast through the Star Fleet. This is the real impact that you can make. Maybe you can't jump in an X-Wing and blow up the Death Star, but you can make a donation to provide these specific tangible things to make a real impact on the cause. You can add an incentive. When you donate today, we'll send you a free piece of the first Death Star to remind you of the critical role that you play in the fight to save the galaxy. So you can use these types of incentives to get someone to give now. It's not another reason why someone should give, but it's a reason they might give today as opposed to tomorrow or next week. And then finally, call to action. We're not asking the donor to go save the entire galaxy. We're asking them to give. What's their role to play? What's the next step? Well, you consider donating. You can make your donation here. And it's signed by a real human being that's believable because she's advocating for this cause every single day. Sent from a real person, your emails should be too. Donors are logical people, and we need to give them real reasons why they should give. Because donors are going to compare and contrast you to other organizations, whether they're in your space and vertical and cause or somewhere else. Because your donors have a limited capacity to give, and they're trying to find where can I best invest my money to make an impact on something that I care about. So we can't just say give because there's a deadline. We have to give them real reasons why they should give, and give to you rather than some other organization, or give at all. The third type of email that I want us to have sort of in our playbook and in our toolkit as we approach the year-end season is what I call the closer email. Similar to a closing pitcher where you can't put them in at the beginning of the game. They're going to burn out really fast and not be quite as effective. There's a specific time and place for this email. In a baseball game, it's at the end of the game. In our campaigns, it's as we get close to the deadline, which is going to be towards the end of the game, if you will. December 30th, December 31st, or maybe in a Giving Tuesday campaign as you're getting close to the end of the Giving Tuesday deadline. Closer number one, first example I want to look at is the deadline email. The goal of this email is not to rehash all the reasons why someone should give. You've been doing this over the course of your campaign, both through priming emails and through your direct appeals. And now you're reminding donors of the deadline without rehashing everything. Here's an example of what it may look like. This is one from the Special Olympics. And I think this email is really interesting because almost every word on this page does one of two things. So I'm going to highlight all these things in red for you. Everything that is in red is invoking urgency. Your gift can be tripled when you donate before midnight tomorrow. And there's a big countdown clock in the middle. And it says, give now, give now, give now, and give before midnight tomorrow. All these things are invoking a sense of urgency. You cannot delay your gift. It's only going to be impactful if you give it today. Don't delay your giving. Now, everything in green I'm going to highlight for you here is incentive. Not just urgency, but an additional reason to give now, an incentive. Your gift can be tripled. Triple the support, triple the joy, tripled. In fact, the call to action button in the middle says triple your gift. 3 times as many athletes, 3 times as many athletes, 3 times as many athletes. And then even in the call to action, I don't have it highlighted for you, but the URL at the bottom, specialolympics.org/triple your gift. So everything in this email is either invoking more urgency or it's leading into this additional incentive to give. You can do this in your emails as well. In fact, through experimentation, we found that trying to rehash all the reasons why someone should give, your value proposition, if you will, is oftentimes not quite as effective when you get close to a deadline like this. Now, typically, as we're running lots of experimentation on email fundraising, we tend to find that the more copy that you have or the more value proposition you have, the more effective your appeal is going to be. But that's actually not the case necessarily with these closer emails. In fact, in version A, you see the character counts on your screen. Version A spends more time in the email focusing on why someone should give and rehashing these value proposition ideas. Version B has less copy. In fact, it has 32% less copy. And by removing the value proposition primary copy around why should I give, the tone of the email is more focused on this quick reminder to give. And this actually led to a 30% increase in donations. So again, when it comes to December 31st and you're getting close to the deadline, you don't need a big, long, lengthy email to rehash all the reasons to give. You might just need to send a reminder. In fact, you might send 2 reminders. You may send a final a reminder on the morning of December 31st, and then you might send a final little check-in as you get close to the end of the day. So this reminder email is a personal email to make sure that they didn't miss your deadline email. Here's what it might look like. This can be really effective. Instead of just writing a brand new email with a new countdown clock and all these different things, you might just send something that looks like a forward. You can see this one comes from Jacinta at World Concern, sent to Pam. And it says, just wanted to send you a quick note to make sure you receive this email. I don't want you to miss out on the chance to double your gift. God bless, Jacinta. And then you can see below on the left side of your screen, they've inserted the email from earlier in the day. So they don't have to go through the work of writing a brand new email. They're actually just forwarding on an email like you might do to a colleague. If you're working on a project and you're getting close to a deadline and you haven't heard back from someone you need to hear back from, you oftentimes don't write a brand new email. You might just jump to the email thread, hit reply and say, hey, did you see this email? I need to hear back from you real quick. This is how people communicate in email. So we can do the same thing even in our fundraising emails. Here's an example, and this is not a donation appeal. This is actually more of a marketing email, where we were trying to get more people to sign up for a webinar. Not this one, but other webinar. And in version A, this was an email resend. So there were people we had initially invited, and they hadn't replied or they hadn't signed up yet. So we wrote a new email, new reasons why you might sign up. This is a typical approach for an email resend. But then we tested this against a different type of resend using this forward style reply email. So at the top, it's a very quick note. It says, hi, fellow optimizer, or first name. I emailed you last week. Notice you haven't responded yet. Here's a link to register. Boom, you can go there, you can sign up. And then below in this email is the original invitation that we had sent. And by using this sort of reply-focused approach, not rehashing and rewriting a brand new email, just using this reply, humanized reply style email, we actually saw a 20% increase in people signing up for this webinar. So this is an approach you can take. Don't rewrite the whole thing, just send a quick little reminder, just like a human might do. And keep in mind that donors are busy people just like you are. Sometimes you just need a gentle and quick reminder to make sure you get something done by a certain time. Your donor maybe decided 2 weeks ago they want to give to you and they were really inspired. But maybe they were on their mobile phone, maybe they were sitting at a stoplight. This is a bad habit of a lot of people, sometimes myself, and they saw a notification come through and they're like, oh, actually, I really want to do that, but I'm not in a place to be able to give right now. They might just need a reminder later on to make sure that they get that gift done. Sometimes people just forget. So here's your slightly more advanced year-end fundraising playbook. Number one, send more cultivating emails. We need to lean into the relationship. Help people understand why their gift is going to be best invested in you, not through making more appeals, but through building trust. Number two, we need to make our appeals, you should make your appeals more personal, and make sure you give logical, clear, tangible reasons for someone to give. Again, donors are going to be comparing you throughout the season to other organizations where they might give to make an impact. If we just send appeals that are focused on give before the deadline, then we sound like everybody else. What's going to set you apart? We need to give real, tangible reasons to give. And then third, we need to send clear reminders to give now. People get busy. Again, they may have decided a while ago to give and just couldn't at the time. So we can send a clear reminder with incentive and with urgency to help people decide to give now rather than delay their giving. And don't forget throughout all of this to communicate like a human being. There's one more thing I want to share with you. And yes, it's going to be another Star Wars reference, but I hope that's okay. In the movie, The Force Awakens, if you have seen it, you'll understand this. If not, I'll kind of explain it here. They spend most of the movie looking for this map to a guy named Luke Skywalker. If you don't know Luke Skywalker, he's a Jedi Master. They're trying to recruit him to help fight the evil First Order and again, restore peace and justice to the galaxy, like they've been doing it in basically every other Star Wars movie. But they're trying to find this map to go find Luke Skywalker. And when they find the map, they're all excited to see it. They get the map and they open it up, and then they're kind of let down and they're disappointed because while this map is the most critical piece to the puzzle, they actually don't know where in the galaxy this map fits. It's kind of a certain location, but they don't know where in this giant universe and galaxy does this map exist. And so then they spend the rest of the movie, they're running around, all that stuff. They're trying to still find Luke Skywalker and fight off the First Order. And then conveniently at the end of the movie, R2-D2 wakes up and he has the full galactic star map in his database. Wonderful. And there's this little perfect puzzle piece size hole for them to fit the map of Luke Skywalker into. And now, success, they can go find him and recruit him to be on their side. Why are we talking about Star Wars and this movie? Because this year-end playbook and your year-end strategies in general could be the most critical piece of the puzzle for you to growing your giving during this season and growing your revenue to have an incredible impact in 2022. However, if we are not cultivating and stewarding our donors effectively throughout the rest of the year, we're not going to see the results we want to see during the year-end season. So your playbook is kind of like this map. It's not worthless, but in some cases it's not going to be effective if we haven't been cultivating well throughout the rest of the season. So one tip that I want to give to you that you can actually start now is start sending a weekly cultivation email to your donors. Even if you haven't been doing this all year, you can start now and get some reps in before November 15th comes around, and really before the high urgency of the year-end season hits. Here's an experiment that's really interesting and shows the value of this. At this organization, they had noticed that about 1 in 4 of their email subscribers had basically stopped engaging. They hadn't necessarily unsubscribed, but they stopped opening and they stopped clicking and they stopped engaging in a meaningful way. And so they wanted to find a way to re-engage these subscribers. Some of them are donors, some of them are not. They're trying to find ways to re-engage them. So they split their file in half. Half their file got the same cadence of emails, and the other half started to get a weekly email in their inbox, sent from a human being. It looks like it's sent from a human being. It did not ask for money. It just prompted them to engage with some sort of piece of content. It might be an article, a news post, it might be a blog, something that's engaging them in a real way, helping them stay connected to the cause and understand what's happening on a weekly basis so they can stay plugged into something that they care about. And this weekly email was sent for a period of 6 months. And after the 6-month period, they went back and they analyzed what's the real impact of cultivation. It can be really hard for us to lean into cultivation and invest in cultivation because we don't see an immediate impact. You're just sending an email that gets maybe someone to get an open, or maybe send a reply back to you, or maybe visit a link to a blog post, but it doesn't necessarily result in a donation right away. But over 6 months, they actually saw that these subscribers led to 42% increase in online revenue because they had been cultivated over a 6-month period of time. So cultivation is hugely important and critical throughout the year, and then especially during this year-end season, to actually seeing your revenue grow. So lean into the relationship, invest in the relationship, and you can start doing this now. Even if it's not a weekly email, maybe it's every other week. You might not even have to have a link to go to a page to read an article. Maybe it's just a story from you, something you heard last week of someone that was really impacted by your cause. Lean into the relationship and cultivate, and you're most likely going to see an impact on your revenue. What I want to leave you with is an opportunity to dive deeper into some of these learnings, into some of this content, into additional examples to build out your campaign throughout the season. I know we're getting really close to like the year-end season. Again, we say that it starts on November 15th, right before Thanksgiving, here in the States at least. But there's still time to learn some new ideas, inject some new emails and some new strategies to boost your results. You can feel free to pull out your phone, even right now, open the camera, grab that QR code and head to the landing page and activate your free course right now. You can also plug that URL into your browser and go activate that as well. We're going to have some time for some Q&A. Before we do that, I want to hand things over to Nick to share with us why year-end is important to him and to Fundraise Up, and how they might be able to serve you this season. And in particular, Nick, I'm curious because I just saw this on your website today. Fundraise Up uses machine learning, human-centered design, and magic to double your revenue. How do you use magic to double your revenue? So Nick, hand it over to you for a couple minutes here.
You know, I will say, and by the way, I tried to turn on my video and was not able to. So I promise I'm not trying to hide out here. But I will say that following along with today's theme, it's not so much magic and more of the force that's powering the platform. But really, it's a lot of the concepts we're talking about today in terms of thinking about fundraising from a more analytical perspective, using data, using research, and a lot of testing to help us understand, what is driving donors to give? How do we need to craft our messaging to them? And so much of what you shared today, Nathan, has to do with being human-centric. And for a software company, that's incredibly important to us. It's important for us to make technology that when somebody is interacting with it, it doesn't feel overwhelming. It doesn't feel like something that they don't understand and get frustrated about. It needs to be something that feels like an experience that they have in their everyday lives. So we've crafted our own platform around these very same principles. And certainly here, as we head into a high season of giving, and I was just checking the countdown on the Giving Tuesday website, we're 39 days away from Giving Tuesday.
Oh boy.
And I know, oh boy, my heart is starting to beat a little faster. And as we look ahead to these high days and weeks and months of giving, we have to make sure that we have crafted ahead of time these experiences so that when donors are receiving our messaging and our appeals, that we've tugged at their heartstrings in such a way that they want to give, that as nonprofit fundraisers, we've crafted experiences for them that make it easy to get online and make a donation to the nonprofit. So we're really excited to partner with our nonprofits that we have as part of our family of customers now. And certainly if you are watching this session today and interested in plugging in a platform that's going to help you 2x your digital revenue and see about a 3x growth factor in your recurring donor base, then now's the time to chat. It's not too late. You know, we may be in Q4, but we've still got time to help set up some really excellent experiences.
I love that. Thank you so much, Nick. We appreciate your partnership and your support and your heart and vision for growing giving, growing fundraising, and ultimately generosity. And we love Fundraise Up because y'all are focused on data and testing and research, just as we are, and integrating that every day into your platform to help boost giving. And that's incredible. So please go check out Fundraise Up. They're a wonderful option for you as you're trying to grow your giving, both during year end and as you look into 2022. I believe we have a few questions here. Actually, it looks like we have 20 questions here, so that's wonderful. We'll try to answer as many as we can here before 2 o'clock, and then we'll sign off maybe a few minutes after that. But we've got a question right here at the top. I'm going to go from top to bottom. We'll move through that way. From Cody, is there a new trend or ideology developing with postal service struggles? Should we still invest in postal communications if we are not sure if it will deliver in a timely manner? Cody, I'm not going to pretend to be a direct mail expert. I absolutely am not. We've got some good friends at a company called Mile 19 that really specialize in helping bring some of that stuff in-house. So you can improve efficiencies and optimization and all that stuff. So that might be a resource to check out. And largely, just as some of those delivery times get more and more difficult, it just means we have to get better at planning. But in some cases, yes, maybe we're leaning in to online strategies in order to cultivate a postal donor. I was talking earlier today about some multi-channel strategies and the impact of reaching out to postal donors with an email. Even if a postal donor never gives to you online, just having their email address and cultivating them that way can lead to a significant increase in their value to you. So that might be something to consider as well, not just relying on direct mail to cultivate a postal donor, but also using online channels in tandem. Again, not a direct mail expert here, not going to pretend to be, but hopefully that's helpful. We have a question from Anita. How do you create a free product to give away? Anita, we have an entire course called Turning Facebook Likes into Donors that dives into this concept, specifically focusing around how do you use free content in order to grow giving. I can actually share a resource with you. Maybe Riley has it on hand. She could drop it in the chat or something. There's a blog post I put together maybe a month ago on this sort of model, using free content to lead towards a donation. You can also find it on our website. But how do you create a free product to give away? In many cases, you probably have the content that you need already, whether it's in a blog post. Maybe you have popular blog posts or articles or things like that. Maybe you've got videos you've made of testimonials of people impacted by your cause. You may have a lot of existing content that you've just never packaged up into something like an ebook. That can be a really simple email offer to put together. You just need some copy. You can throw it in a Word doc, and then you can format it from there, export it as a PDF, put it behind a landing page form for someone to download in exchange for their email address. We don't have enough time to get into all the details there, but again, you can check out some other resources on our site or that course, Turning Facebook Likes into Donors, for some other insights there. Question from Wesley, do you know how many people used a different email on the instant page? I don't know that. I assume you mean different in comparison to the one they signed up for the resource with. I'm not sure about that. We run this type of a campaign and an offer, basically every day for almost every organization that we're working with. I'm not quite sure what what the core of this question is getting at. So if you've got other ideas there, happy to answer questions, but I'm not quite sure on the difference in terms of email on the landing page versus email on the instant page. Question from Matthew. Any insights on, quote, hijacking holiday shopping days, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Green Monday? I actually haven't heard of Green Monday. Maybe I should, especially for organizations offering premiums or gift memberships. I don't have any specific insights with data and research that we've conducted around offering something on Cyber Monday. But something that you might consider is that those days are just loaded with communication from Amazon and everybody else trying to get a piece of everyone's wallet. So it may be very hard to compete on those days. That's not to say maybe you shouldn't try. That's something really interesting that you could test this season so that going forward, is this something we can do and make an impact on? But that would be my only word of caution is, wow, people are going to be swamped in terms of their social media feeds and with their inbox, that it might be really hard to cut through some of that noise. If you're going to try to, probably the way to cut through the noise is not sending something else that they could buy and pay for on those days. It might be an opportunity to lean into cultivation and give them something for free and use that free offer model. So that might be something to test out. Question from Rebecca. Why is the solution such a soft transition? It makes me read the narrative very closely. I'm not quite sure what this is in relation to. I assume those specific slides. If you've got more context there, I can try to answer that. What is solution and your impact were set off more visually? Again, I don't remember exactly which slide we're referring to. If you've got a specific example you can reference, that would be helpful, and I'll try to answer that. Let's see, a question from Diana. Do signatures or photos of the writer of the personal email have more or less impact? Diana, I think this can go kind of both ways. It's not going to be the most effective experiment or test that you could run, but my encouragement to you that this is an insight from testing. It's not absolutely this is the way to go, but an insight that we've seen through data is the more that you can make that appeal in your email look like just the standard email you'd send out of Gmail, the more effective it's going to be. So if in your just natural normal signature, you typically put a photo of yourself and a logo of your organization, that might be okay. That might be okay. I'm going to err on the side of not having that because some of the entire reason, one of the reasons that these types of emails can be more effective is with less imagery and less HTML markup in the background, they actually have a greater likelihood of getting put into the primary inbox and actually seen by your donor. So Gmail, for example, might see something that's really heavy in terms of markup and images and say, that's marketing, I'm going to put it in the promotions tab. And you might never see it. So if you can reduce the weight and the size of your email by removing some images and removing that markup, you actually have a better chance of getting it seen in your inbox in the primary tab. So I'm going to err on the side of less images as much as possible, even in a signature. Question from Stephanie. Regarding design and human email, what about including photos, real, not stock? Does that have a positive impact? Again, similar type of insight I'd give you here. In most cases, I'm going to err on the side of not having them. Definitely don't have stock photos because everyone knows they're stock photos and they're not actually that helpful. The times we have seen an image be effective is if it looks natural, like maybe you just pulled out your phone and you took a picture. Granted, some of those can look really professional at this point, but looking like a natural photo, not a professional photographer in stock photos, but something more organic. And it has to directly relate to the content of the email, so not just something generic. And it has to help provide additional value. So really illustrating in a meaningful way the point that you're trying to make. That said, I would always test it. I would always put it to the test so that you know exactly the impact it's going to have. It's easy to look at a photo and pop it in and say, oh, people are going to love that. But if a picture is worth 1,000 words, as they say, how do you know that they're the right words? How do you know that the ones that are swimming around in your donor's brain when they see that image are actually aligning with the messaging that you're putting in the email? It can be hard to know. So I'm going to err on the side of no images. And if you think you've really got a good one, I would put it to the test. A question from Abby. I hope I pronounced that right. Abby Pascal. Have you seen success with premiums without impacting LTV? I can't speak specifically to LTV, but I can say what we know about a premium is it has the tendency to increase an average gift size, especially when you have a threshold for it, like you can get this free gift if you give $75 or more. Well, naturally, the people that give are going to give towards, if not above, that threshold. So it can increase average gift size, but in a lot of cases, it might actually decrease, especially for a new donor, maybe not on a main donation page, but maybe for a new donor on those instant donation page, a premium might actually decrease the amount of people giving, period. So you may see a higher average gift size, but it might decrease total conversions, especially if you have a threshold on it, like you've got to give $75 or more. So with all premiums, I would test those as your incentive to really know the impact they make before you roll it out to your entire file in mass. And be careful of those thresholds. Unless you know these are kind of like recurring, not recurring donors, but people who have given before or have familiarity with you, then it's probably safer. Question from Rebecca. I'm all in favor of less design in emails to make it feel more personal, but what about photos, real photos of our constituents or services in action? Again, similar answer to before. Include photos if it's going to add significant value. And if you think you've really got a good one, I would put it to the test, but I'm going to err on the side of no photos. We have time for just a couple more questions because it's already 2:02, that's Central Time. We're going to have a hard stop at 2:05. So I'll try to get a couple more questions in here. Then if you've got additional follow-up questions, feel free to email me. We can talk offline. Question from New Israel Fund of Canada. How do you convey urgency without a matching gift? Well, I would actually say that a matching gift in and of itself doesn't necessarily convey urgency. It's an incentive and a reason I might give because I can make an impact. Typically, those are attached to a deadline, like you have to give before this day or this hour to get the match. So that's where the urgency comes in. But conveying urgency without a matching gift is as simple as having that clear deadline or even a clear goal. The baked in one into year end is December 31st. If you give by midnight, December 31st, you have to give by then in order to be a part of this year end campaign in order to help us reach our goal. So there's baked in urgency there, even without a matching gift. And then a question from Rebecca about the closer email. What kind of segmenting should be done based on behavior with the preceding lead up emails that people have been sent? We'll just step back and talk about segmentation for a moment, specifically, because I'm assuming this is kind of around the idea of, if people haven't seen or opened some of these initial emails you sent, is the closer going to be more effective? That's kind of where I assume this question is going. It's really hard to judge accurately if someone has opened an email or not. And that's actually getting more and more difficult. With the rollout of iOS 15, I actually just downloaded it on my own phone yesterday, and it's really annoying because things are different and it's not the same. But with the rollout of iOS 15, open tracking, which was already bad and getting worse, is actually getting less and less accurate. Because when an email gets downloaded on an iOS 15 user's phone, it actually gets flagged as open. It's just how it works in the background. So you may actually see some opens that aren't really opens. And on the inverse side of this, maybe you've received one of these emails. We've been running this sort of like re-engagement email campaign ourselves. So after you haven't opened a certain number of emails, you'll get an email from me that says, hey, are we okay? You haven't opened an email in a while. I want to make sure we're sending you quality content that's helpful for you. And a lot of the replies back that I get basically say, oh, actually, I read every email. I just open it in a preview pane. But for some reason, that doesn't actually trigger an open in our email marketing tool. So trying to build segmentation off of if someone has seen an email or not can be really hard. If you're going to build segmentation, I would likely, based on that type of behavior, I'd try to base it more off of a web page view or something like that, or a meaningful interaction that someone has taken. So hopefully, Rebecca, that's helpful as you're thinking about how to use segmentation during this season. All right, there's several questions still in here. If you have a question you'd like me to follow up on, feel free to shoot me an email, nathan@nextafter.com. We will see you on the next webinar and hopefully sooner. Again, I'd love for you to jump into this year-end course. You can activate this for free and jump into that content there and get some other additional ideas to improve your year-end fundraising this season. Thank you so much for being here today. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for giving us an hour and 5 minutes of your time. I hope it was helpful. Hopefully we didn't waste a moment. Best of luck to you. We're rooting for you here at Next After, and we'll see you very soon. Take care. Bye.